For 20 years, he was the king of morning television. A smiling, trusted face beamed into millions of American homes every single day, a constant and reassuring presence at the breakfast table. He was the man who interviewed presidents and princes, who guided the nation through triumphs and tragedies, who co-hosted the Olympics and the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. For this, Matt Lauer was paid a staggering $20 to $25 million a year, cementing his status not just as a journalist, but as an untouchable icon of American media. He had built a personal fortune worth over $100 million, a legacy that seemed carved in stone. Then, on the morning of November 29, 2017, it all shattered. In a broadcast that sent shockwaves across the country, his own colleagues, visibly emotional and shaken, were forced to announce his termination to a stunned nation. The court of public opinion delivered its verdict almost instantly. But the public firing, the televised humiliation, was just the beginning. The real reckoning, the one that truly sealed his fate forever, wasn't delivered in a courtroom or on live TV. It was handed down behind the closed doors of NBC's executive suites in a dramatic final confrontation that would cost Matt Lauer not just his job and his reputation, but a significant future payday that ensured a final goodbye forever. For 2 decades, at a salary of up to $25 million a year, he was the man America trusted to start their day. He was a guest in millions of homes, a smiling face of journalistic integrity. But while he was interviewing world leaders, a much darker story was unfolding off camera, a story of power, secrets, and betrayal. On November 29, 2017, his co-hosts, Savannah Guthrie and Hoda Kotb, had to announce his firing, live on air, to a shocked nation. But the public firing was just the start. The real consequence, the one that sealed his professional fate forever, was delivered in a secret final confrontation that cost him the remainder of his massive contract and made him an outcast overnight. This is the story of what happened in those final hours, the contractual details that led to his financial fallout, and the professional exile that became his permanent reality. To understand the magnitude of the fall, you first have to comprehend the sheer height of the power Matt Lauer wielded. For 2 decades, he wasn't just an anchor of the Today Show, he was the Today Show. He ascended to the co-anchor chair in January 1997, and from that seat, he became one of the most influential figures in American media. His tenure was a masterclass in building public trust. He was charming, intelligent, and had an almost supernatural ability to connect with his audience, whether he was conducting a serious political interview or participating in a light-hearted cooking segment. He sat across from presidents, from George W. Bush to Barack Obama. He secured landmark interviews, including a notable one with Princes William and Harry. He was a face of NBC's Olympic coverage and a co-host of the iconic Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade for years. These weren't just television gigs, they were cultural touchstones, events that placed Lauer at the very center of American life. He was more than a journalist. He was a fixture, a comforting and reliable part of the national routine. This perceived reliability translated into immense power within the walls of 30 Rockefeller Plaza. His contract, worth between $20 and $25 million per year, made him one of the highest-paid individuals in all of television news. But his influence went far beyond his paycheck. Lauer was seen as the gravitational center of the Today Show. His approval was crucial, his on-air chemistry with co-hosts was a matter of intense network focus, and his displeasure could have seismic consequences. He was, for all intents and purposes, the king of Studio 1A, a man whose position seemed unassailable. He had curated an image of a dedicated family man, a professional of the highest caliber, and a friend to millions of viewers who invited him into their homes each morning. It was this meticulously crafted persona, this golden legacy of trust and authority, that made the revelations to come not just scandalous, but a profound and personal betrayal to the audience that had made him a star. Long before the Dam of Silence, Broke in November 2017, the facade of Matt Lauer's perfect image had already begun to show some serious cracks. To the public, these were perhaps isolated incidents or media gossip. But to those inside NBC, they were part of a pattern, a collection of open secrets that painted a picture of a man vastly different from his on-air persona. The most public and damaging of these cracks was the disastrous and painful exit of his co-anchor, Ann Curry, in 2012. Curry, a respected journalist, was promoted to co-anchor alongside Lauer in 2011 after 15 years on the show. From the start, the on-air chemistry was visibly strained. Behind the scenes, the situation was reportedly far worse. According to extensive reporting, a boys' club atmosphere undermined Curry, and her final months were described as a form of professional torture. This all culminated in her tearful, humiliating on-air departure, an event for which Lauer was widely blamed by the public. As she cried, Lauer attempted an awkward kiss goodbye, and she flinched away, a moment that became a symbol of the public's souring sentiment against him. Years later, Ann Curry told interviewers she was not surprised by the Lauer allegations. The Ann Curry saga was a public relations nightmare for Lauer, but the whispers about his behavior weren't just limited to his treatment of co-hosts. One of the most damning details to emerge was the existence of a button under his desk. With a push, Lauer could remotely close his office door from the inside. To his accusers, the implication was chilling. It was seen as a tool of power and control, a mechanism that allowed him to create a private, sealed-off space. NBC's internal investigation later clarified that the button was a standard feature in many executive offices that simply released a magnet holding the door open, but did not lock it. By the fall of 2017, these whispers were growing into a roar. The Me Too movement was gaining unstoppable momentum, and investigative reporters were already deep into stories about Lauer's behavior. The carefully constructed world of NBC's biggest star was on the verge of implosion. The end came with breathtaking speed. It began not with a bang, but with a quiet, determined meeting on a Monday evening. On November 27, 2017, a young female, NBC employee, accompanied by her lawyer, walked into the offices of NBC's Human Resources and Legal Departments. She delivered a detailed, formal complaint against Matt Lauer. The complaint was explosive, alleging Lauer had engaged in inappropriate sexual behavior with her, beginning during the 2014 Winter Olympics in Sochi. The complaint landed like a grenade in the laps of NBC's top brass. This wasn't a rumor. This was a detailed complaint from a current colleague, making it impossible to ignore. The information shot up the chain of command to NBC News chairman Andy Lack. The hours that followed were a frantic, high-stakes scramble. With the Not Me Too movement at its absolute peak, public tolerance for such behavior from powerful men had evaporated. The complaint was deemed credible and a clear violation of our company's standards. There was no room for ambiguity. Lauer had become a massive liability overnight. The final confrontation was cold and clinical. Late on Tuesday night, November 28th, Andy Lack informed Lauer of his termination. Within roughly 24 hours of the formal complaint being filed, Matt Lauer's 2-decade reign at NBC was over. At 4 a.m. the next morning, Savannah Guthrie and Hoda Kotb received the shocking news on their way to work. Just moments before going live, they were told they would have to announce the firing of their friend and partner to the world. As Guthrie read Andy Lack's memo on air, her voice trembling, the private corporate crisis became a public spectacle. She spoke of her heartbreak for her dear friend, but also for the brave colleague who came forward. It was a moment of raw human emotion that underscored the deep sense of betrayal felt within NBC. The king had been dethroned, swiftly and brutally. The public saw Matt Lauer fired on television, a stunning end to a celebrated career. But that was only the public fallout. The true, life-altering consequence was delivered privately, methodically, and with devastating financial implications. This wasn't a slap on the wrist. This was a professional erasure, ensuring that Matt Lauer would not just leave NBC, but would be exiled from the industry he once dominated. The first part of this reckoning was financial. At the time of his firing, Lauer was in the middle of a multi-year contract that paid him between $20 and $25 million annually. In the world of high-powered celebrities, terminations often come with a golden parachute, a massive severance package. Lauer's legal team reportedly began negotiations, likely expecting a payout for the remainder of his contract. But NBC held a powerful card, the for-cause termination. The complaint against Lauer was so clear-cut that the network determined it had cause to fire him, meaning they were under no obligation to pay him another dollar. In a staff meeting, an NBC executive assured employees that Lauer's lucrative contract was now null and void. There would be no payout. Now, this didn't destroy the estimated $80 million fortune he had already accumulated, but the tens of millions he expected to receive simply vanished. The second, and perhaps more brutal consequence, was professional. The floodgates opened. The initial complaint was followed by reports from other accusers. Variety published its months-long investigation, and the most harrowing allegation came in Ronan Farrow's 2019 book, Catch and Kill. Brooke Neville's, the colleague whose initial complaint led to his firing, alleged that Lauer had raped her in his Sochi hotel room. Lauer vehemently denied the charge, claiming the encounter was a consensual affair, but the damage was irreversible. Matt Lauer became an industry pariah. He was radioactive. No network would touch him. This professional exile forced him into a new, quiet life. He retreated from the public eye, spending most of his time in the Hamptons. He sold his sprawling Hamptons estate, Stronghart Manor, which he had purchased from Richard Gere, though he still owns other property in the area. His social circle drastically changed, with many old friends cutting him off. He lives a very quiet lifestyle, far from the spotlight he once commanded, and is reportedly dating a public relations executive named Shamin Abbas. The public judgment was one of shame, but the professional reckoning handed down by NBC, the complete withdrawal of future financial reward and industry standing, was the one that guaranteed his permanent exile. It was a final, silent, and absolute goodbye. Before we continue, if you're finding this deep dive into the real consequences of celebrity scandals compelling, take a moment to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. We go beyond the headlines to uncover the stories you haven't heard. Before November 29, 2017, Matt Lauer's legacy seemed secure. He was destined to be remembered as a titan of morning television, a journalist who had a front-row seat to history for over 2 decades. But in the space of a single morning, that legacy was utterly and irrevocably destroyed. Today, his name evokes not trust, but betrayal. Not professionalism, but a chilling abuse of power. The totality of his fall is staggering. He didn't just lose a job, he lost his public identity, meticulously crafted over thousands of hours of live television. The smiling, avuncular figure was replaced by the image of a predator who, according to accusers, used his power to harass colleagues. The infamous button under his desk, once an unknown detail, became a powerful symbol of his alleged behavior. His case became a pivotal moment in the Me Too movement, serving as one of the most prominent examples of a powerful media figure being brought down by credible accusations. It forced a painful but necessary reckoning within NBC and across the entire media industry, exposing what some described as a toxic boys' club culture and prompting calls for systemic reform. His firing demonstrated that even the most powerful and protected stars were no longer untouchable. In the years since his downfall, Lauer has remained largely in a self-imposed exile. He lives a quiet life in the Hamptons, occasionally seen, but rarely heard from. He has been spotted spending time with his children and his girlfriend, while some reports in 2025 suggested he was networking and hoping for a comeback. A return to the public eye seems all but impossible. His attempts to discredit his accusers and Ronan Farrow's reporting have been widely criticized, and have only further cemented his status as a pariah. His legacy is no longer written by the historic interviews he conducted. It's now permanently defined by the brave colleague who walked into an NBC office on a Monday night, and by the gut-wrenching details of what allegedly happened in a Sochi hotel room. He is no longer an icon. He is a cautionary tale. A story of how a carefully constructed empire of trust can be built over 20 years, and how the truth can burn it all to the ground in a single day. The final judgment for Matt Lauer wasn't about a courtroom or a jail cell. It was about the permanent erasure of his life's work, replaced by a legacy of shame from which there is no escape. A final, irreversible goodbye.